Hey. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another BizBuzz Live. Chris Muzan here with you. On today's show, we're going to be talking about something that I think a lot of people are maybe misinformed about, or maybe haven't looked at the numbers specifically, but it's very, very big in our society and our culture when it comes to delivery side hustles. And I got some information I think you probably want to stick around and listen to. So stick around. All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of BizBuzz Live. I'm your host, Chris Muzan. We are going live here on LinkedIn and YouTube. I appreciate everyone that continues to check in and continues to message about the information and the insights you've been getting around how to make money. How to make money, y'all. Again, the reason why we started this show is because as a financial professional over the past 12, 13 years, people come to me with all types of financial questions. People come to me with all types of financial situations. I deal with a lot of different backgrounds, demographics, psychographics, all across money. And whether we're talking about their investments, whether we're talking about their savings, whether we're talking about their insurance or their retirement or their debt plan or whatever the case is, inevitably the conversation comes back to, well, how are you making money, your cash flow? How are you bringing it in? And how are you keeping more of what's coming in? Inevitably, that's where the conversation goes. And so there's a lot of financial professionals that help with the budgeting side of things and how to put a proper budget in place and track your money. I do those things. But the conversation now in 2025, at the time of recording this, it's May 16th, 2025. The conversation we should be having right now is around how are we earning income? How are we earning income? That is such an important part of our cash flow. And I don't think we have enough of those conversations that are real conversations around what can we do to bring in income. You know, I'm on TikTok a bunch, just consuming, but also putting out content there. By the way, feel free to follow me over there on TikTok and all the other places at CMuzon1, at my first initial last name, the number 1. So go over there, follow me on TikTok. Because I put out different content across all the platforms. So what you see of me over here on LinkedIn is not what you'll see of me on TikTok. It's not what you'll see of me on Facebook. It's not what you see of me on Instagram or anywhere else, because every platform is a little bit different. So you'll get a different side of me. Either way, that's an incentive to go over there and follow me over there. But either way, on TikTok, there's a lot of people having these conversations. It's all in my For You page about people not being happy with the jobs. Just 3 weeks ago on this show, we talked about the boomers, millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, kind of how they are faring in corporate America. And most of them were dissatisfied. They weren't happy with the amount of money they were making. They weren't happy with their work-life balance. And then we start looking at other industries and things that are on the rise. Obviously, the first half of this year has been riddled with layoffs. Just at the time of recording this, Microsoft just laid off another 7,000 people. I just got a chance to see that Bahama Breeze, the restaurant, just shut down another like 15 locations or something like that all this week. Right? We're not even halfway into the year, and the amount of downsizing and layoffs and all the things that have been happening are crazy. So we have to come to have a real conversation around, well, how then do we make money? Does the safe, secure job still exist? Is there a world in which you can work a 9 to 5, a 9 to 6, and make an honest living and still be able to have a balance or a quality of life that's suitable for you, have your bills paid, make sure that you can enjoy a little bit of time with your family or your friends and not be completely strapped for resources. Is that a world that still exists? I don't know that answer. Mm, By me talking to people, I would say maybe that world doesn't exist because or that world is shrinking drastically very quickly, right? Like there's probably just pre-pandemic, I guess, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that was a world that the majority, like people were okay with their jobs. Their money was coming in. They could save money. They were running up debt like crazy anyway, but like still they could pay for things. They could buy cars. The stock market was doing well, like all the things. 7 years later, I don't know that that's the case, but we don't have enough conversations around how people make money. And so that's what the premise of the show is, y'all, is just so that we can talk about like how are people making money, and not just like the here's how to, the ABCs of how to start a business, but more so along the lines of like, what ideas do you have about the ways that you earn income? You could be a high paid employee for sure. You can go off, get a degree, become a high paid employee. It's funny. I was having lunch by myself, and a lady was sitting next to me, and older lady, and we're personable, so I always start talking. She might have started talking to me, I can't remember. But she was a restaurant owner. She just sold her restaurant like 2-3 years ago. Her and her husband had that restaurant for 25 years, and they just sold it, or husband passed away, but she just sold it. And we're having a conversation about just work and people working, and she mentioned like her niece or something like that like she was like she just got out of school, and the first job she got is paying her like $80,000 or something, like fresh out. And I was like, and she was like, that's good. I was like, yeah, that's good. And I asked her, what'd you get the degree in? It was some obscure degree I didn't even know. And then I asked the magical question of how much debt is she in? Like how much college debt? She's like, I don't know, probably like 150, 180,000, something like that. And I'm like, so that there's your proportion of like, oh, you get paid 80, but you're 180 in debt, growing at a 6% interest rate. You aren't going to catch up even at an $80,000 entry salary. And so again, and she was a business owner, having that conversation around, is it smart to take on this debt? Are these things that actually are going to now help this young lady, this person in 2035? Is she still going to have that debt? Is she still going to have a job? So we need to start talking about the things that are bringing us money. Today's topic, one of the things that I know people do to make money in 2025 are delivery driving. Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, all the stuff. That's what people do on the side hustle. You could have the high paid job. You could be the high paid employee, probably coming in with student loan debt and other debts potentially just to get you to making a little bit more money. Or you can play in this gig economy, which I know a lot of people are doing. Again, I'm on all these platforms. So people that are getting laid off from their jobs, they are going into driving. Amazon Flex, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Instacart, whatever it is. People are driving. So I really want to dive into some of the things that the stats of this delivery driver side hustle. Some things you may know and some things you may not know, in all honesty. Can you guess what the average age is for a delivery driver? Like a DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, Instacart, Amazon Flex driver? Can you guess? Pause this. I mean, it's live, you can't pause it. But you know what I mean. If you're watching this on the replay, like pause it and like drop a comment in the chat. Like drop a comment of exactly how much you think, or what's the average age of someone that drives, the average age. This shocked me because I always assumed, as most of us did, that mostly like millennials and kind of like younger people are the ones doing some of these jobs of driving. I was shocked to find out that the average age is almost 48 years old. The average age of a delivery driver is it's 47.6 years, but let's just say 48 years old. Imagine that. 48 years old, the average driver, average age. Here's another startling statistic for you. 72% are over the age of 40. 72% of delivery drivers are over the age of 40. I thought this was a young person's side hustle. I thought this was something where you need a little extra cash for the weekend, so you go deliver DoorDash or Uber Eats. This is actually becoming a lifestyle for people over the age of 40. 72% of drivers are over the age of 40. It's 3/4 of them almost. 61% are married. 38% are parents. Like, this delivery driver side of things has become a way that we believe we can make money in our society. These are people with degrees. 28% have finished some college. 21% of people that drive, 2 out of every 10, have a bachelor's degree or better. How crazy is that? As your Uber driver, the person dropping food off, it's not the person that dropped out of high school, that doesn't have anything, that doesn't have any resources. That's not the person. It's the person that finished college, that has a bachelor's degree, that has some debt, that got laid off, and now this is what they have to do to make money. Here's the punchline. You know what the average annual salary is? Again, drop some comments. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts. The average annual salary of somebody that drives, that's a delivery driver, that drives DoorDash, Uber Eats, Instacart, Amazon Flex, any of those. Because again, we see this stuff happening. That's why we're on this show to talk about what are the ways you make money. I know people personally that leave their job, quit their job, get fired from their job, whatever the case is, and their first natural instinct is, let me go drive. Let me go drive for Uber. Let me go do DoorDash. Like, that's the first instinct. But how much do they actually make? If that's your first instinct, you would think that it's because it makes money, right? So again, question, what's the average annual salary? Drop it down. I'll give you some stats on the hourly wages, the average hourly earnings. Again, stuff is going to shock you a bit, but here we go. Uber Eats. If you drive Uber Eats, and this is like the highest to the lowest, the average hourly rate or hourly, wage of an Uber Eats driver is $19.77. $19.77. Average weekly bringing in around $500. Okay, it is what it is. But if you just got laid off from a corporate job and then you go to drive Uber Eats, you're making a little under $20 an hour. DoorDash is even worse. DoorDash average hourly earnings, $15 an hour. So for people that say, oh, I'm just going to go drive, you just put yourself into a $15 an hour job. And it's not even a job because you don't get benefits. And you're running up the miles on your car. And you got to pay for gas. So does it really make money? Again, I know we hear people do it. I know that's our natural thought ever since the pandemic of, let me just do the gig economy. But if you are trying to grow your financial life, if you are trying to find ways to earn more money, that may not be the way to go. I've often seen that people that lose their job, quit their business, whatever, and they have to go into the DoorDash, Uber Eats, flex driver side of things, they actually don't come out making more money than someone that if they just went back and got a different job where they weren't flexible and getting a chance to drive their car around. If they just actually went back to another job, they probably make more money. But somehow we started believing that delivery drivers make more money. Again, DoorDash, $15 an hour average. Instacart, $18 an hour average. Grubhub, $15 an hour average. Again, what is the average annual salary of someone that drives? Again, these are people over the age of 40. 72%, y'all, are over the age of 40. This is no longer your young person sport. The person that, look at the next person that delivers your DoorDash or your Instacart and figure out how old they are, right? But here's the annual salary. You want to know the annual salary, the average? $39,000. $39K. Again, no knock. There's somebody out there not making $39K. There's someone out there making, $15,000. But again, if 72% of these people are over the age of 40 and they're making an extra 39, they're making 39 grand a year, it says something about our society and says something about how we are choosing to make money in our society. We have to be aware that just because people do things, just because you see it happening, just because it's easily accessible, does not mean that it's lucrative, does not mean that that's the way you should go. Again, we're going to see, I'll probably do a series where I, highlight some Uber drivers or some DoorDash drivers and talk about their actual experiences, their actual experiences around what it's like to drive and how much they actually bring in. And in all honesty, like how much freedom they feel like they have and if it helps them get to their financial goals and things like that. Looking at these stats, I can tell you that the answer is no, but we'll interview some of them. We'll have some of the conversations with them because I want you all to be able to understand again how to go out and make more money, the things to not be fooled by, the things to not waste your time with, even if they're popular, even if they're prevalent, even if, right, other people that do them. It might not be the way. Delivery side hustles, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, Amazon Flex, just Uber and Lyft, those things are not necessarily worth it for the time, money, wear and tear on your car. I don't know. There's probably a bunch of other areas, level of safety. There's probably a bunch. So if we're not going to, again, I'm not bashing it because if it works for you, it works for you. If you got nothing else, then sure, that's a way to at least start making money right away. I get it. But realize you're just making $18 an hour. Again, you could go get hired at the warehouse of Amazon and make $18 an hour. There's so many places, but because we believe it's flexible because of how they sold it to us, because of what we remembered of the pandemic, because of what we remembered when it was in high demand and there were less supply. That's really, again, everything in business, everything in economics and life is about supply and demand. Before Uber was what we know of Uber or Uber Eats or any of those things, before it was, they had customers, but they didn't have enough people driving. So in the early days of all of these, the drivers made a bunch of money. Why? Because the supply and demand arbitrage. There's a huge demand and not many people supplying the demand. Where are we in 2025? There's still a demand for Uber. There's probably even more of a demand for delivery services, Instacart, DoorDash, all that. There's probably even more of a demand for it now. It's going to change soon, especially go into this recession and you start understanding that DoorDash order, that Instacart order is just you being lazy and you're paying more money for it. And when you don't have money, then you probably don't want to pay for the things that like you could just go out and get. So we'll probably see a decline in it. But right now it's at its peak. But the problem is because it's in high demand, it's also high supply. Everyone that gets laid off has a thought of, maybe I could just drive Uber. Well, I guess I'll just drive some Lyft or DoorDash. So now the supply and demand is off. Now you have equal demand as supply. They Lyft and Uber and them, like, they don't need like more drivers. They have to like segment how they even send the orders and how you can pick up things. Like the supply and demand is off. So now you try to get into something, the demand's the same, the supply is greater than the demand. Now you're not going to make money doing it. We got to catch this faster. So if you were thinking about driving DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, any of those things, some of these stats hopefully help you. Understand, this is no longer a young person sport. People are doing this to support their families, their marriages. These are people over the age of 40. 72% of people that drive are over the age of 40. So this is not, so this, what does this lead to in our society? Does it lead to having 60-year-old drivers, 50-year-old drivers? Like that's the way to supplement? How fast do you get around town? How quickly do you get your food when that's the case? Anyway, that's a different conversation on the anyway. But either way, so if you were thinking about it, could be an option. Average $15 to $20 an hour. You believe you have some flexibilities, do have some wear and tear on your car. Do you have to drive around town a bunch? Is what it is. If you think it's a way to make money, go do it. But know the facts. Know the facts. I went and I sat down with a girls, a sixth grade girls, like school group, and I was teaching them money, teaching them some things around money. And the first thing that I opened with before we did a game, the first thing I opened with was, tell me what you want to be when you grow up. No, classic question you ask sixth graders, sixth graders. It's like, hey, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to go to college for? What do you want to do? And they all have some different thing to do. And then my follow-up question was, do you know how much money that makes? Because that's not a conversation they tell us in school. They give you the ideas of all the things you can go do, but they don't tell you how much money that makes. They don't really tell you how much that schooling is going to cost. They don't talk about the money part of things. They just talk about the dream and the ambition. And what happens is you get to a place where you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And then you're like, but this doesn't help me. Like, I can't even pay my bills. Those kids that don't know what they want to do and they go get a social work degree or whatever the case is, right? And then they come out and they're like, oh, I just want to help people and do social work. Yeah. And you're going to make $35,000 a year for probably the rest of your life until you wake up and be like, oh, I got to help people in a different manner. They don't tell us that. So that's why it's important to know, whatever you're going to choose to do, how much money does it make? So before you go off and take on this side hustle or this full-time thing of driving, understand how much money it makes. And I just gave you some stats. Average bringing in, let's just say 40 grand, roughly. That's average. Some people make more. Most people probably make less. But it's about you and your financial foundation. It's about how you are going to choose to make money. In 2025, we're going to talk about this stuff again. Corporate America might not be the position for you. Corporate America, 9 to 5s, showing up, and it might not be where you want to go. Side hustles. You got to really evaluate, do these side hustles actually make money? I know you see people doing them, but do they make money? And today we talked about just the delivery side. It's going to get more and more prevalent. Amazon's going to keep getting bigger. Walmart's going to keep getting bigger. These food, right? People need to eat. So these things are going to keep growing a bit. But do the workers make money doing it? Right? I know they don't fully. Last time I was in Vegas, this used to happen all the time. We had like 3 or 4 Uber rides, and in the Uber rides, they gave us their personal numbers so that we could actually just ride with them without doing Uber or Lyft. In Vegas, had like 3 or 4 different Uber drivers do the exact same thing, meaning they don't want to get paid through the app. They rather that you just pay them. They know they're going to make more money. They're going to skim off the Uber, Lyft side of things, and they're going to figure out a way to make more money because they're not getting paid on that side. So that's going to keep happening. The question is that right for you? Is that an industry for you? If not, then we got to come back next week and we're going to talk about, well, what are some things that we can do in order to put ourselves in a position to live the life that we need to financially? If it's not of corporate America, if it's not a side hustle of driving, then what is it that we have to do? Because again, the reason why we do this show is so we can talk about cash flow. So we can talk about how are we making money? I know they taught us to go to school, get good grades, get some higher education, get a good job, get some benefits, work at that job forever. That's not playing out in 2025. Sure, we're going to need people to work, but it wasn't just as last week, 2 weeks ago, I talked about the World Economic Forum talking about what are the skills that are going to be needed in 2030 to be able to actually have a job. And all of the skills, that might have been last week, I can't remember, we'll go back. But all of the jobs, all of the skills are some form of entrepreneurial type of, I don't even know, topics, right? They're entrepreneurial topics where the World Economic Forum talked about the soft skills, the things like creative thinking or analytical thinking or resilience and flexibility, motivation, self-awareness, technological literacy, empathy and active listening, leadership and social influence. That's what the World Economic Forum said are going to be the skills that are needed in order to have a job in 5 years. Well, if that's not what you're not learning that by driving DoorDash or Uber Eats, then we got to start picking up some of these skill sets somewhere. And that's the stuff we're going to start talking a little bit more about, is how do we start picking up some of these skill sets that we're going to need in order to secure our financial future, make sure we're always earning enough money for ourselves and our families. Y'all, we do this every single Friday, 10:30 a.m. We dive in here and we talk about cash flow. If you have other questions or comments or concerns, feel free to drop them down here in the live or the replay of this video. What's been your experience with drivers, delivery drivers? Did you ever dabble in DoorDash, Uber Eats, Uber? Have you seen yourself make money? Do you know people that are struggling in that area and trying to figure it out? Let's start having some more conversations around it, y'all, so that we can start to impact people a bit more in the areas that are most important for them. Okay. All right, y'all. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Until next Friday.